Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Father David Archibald, and you're listening to the 12 noon devotional time and prayers from St. Andrew's Episcopal Church. It's a little bit after 12 now, 12:05, and today is Monday, the 22nd of February. We were off the air last week, so to speak, because of all the ice and the power shutdowns, but it's good to be back with you today. I hope you find this a helpful time. We'll do a little discussion about how to stay spiritually connected and alive during our regular day, and then also do a little prayer practice just for a few moments so we can kind of recenter ourselves and reconnect to a source of kind of positive energy and a positive source of fuel, you would say, for our lives. It's like the bread from heaven, Jesus would say. You know, it's lunchtime, we're going to have food for our tummies at some point, and Jesus would say, don't forget to also pay attention and collect and work for the food for the heart that'll keep you alive on the inside. So I'd like to mention today, as it's part of my life. It also happens to be part of the religious tradition I'm a part of, this Episcopal world, where we have entered a new season of readings and a new part of the life of Jesus. We call it Lent. So I wonder if you would track with me just for a minute. As I look at the life of Jesus, we will also see in his life our lives mirrored back and patterned. So if you remember, we celebrated the birth of Jesus, and we said this is the incarnation of God, the enfleshment of spirit, that heaven and earth got put together back at Christmas time. And we had a little preparation for that we call Advent, a couple of weeks before Christmas, to get ready for this really transformative person who's going to be born. And then after Christmas, we have the showing forth of this new life, the epiphany, the manifestation of this new life. And so Jesus begins to create a following and of disciples. Everything's very positive. So we went from birth of the Christ to the showing forth of the Christ. He has his first healings, his first teachings, his first disciples. But then, as you know, his life is going to be cut short as he gets involved with and in conflict with both the religious leaders who were in control of Judaism at the time, and he'll also come in conflict and cross purposes with the leaders of the Roman Empire who were occupying Jerusalem and Palestine. So both from the religious powers and the civil powers, he is a threat to them because he doesn't really, toe their point of view. He doesn't follow how they want to order society. He doesn't really fight them. He just ignores them and goes a whole different direction. So this is the beginning of that conflict time in Lent. If the first part was birth and life and achievement and moving forward and excitement about a new kingdom, well, then this second half of his life becomes one of hardship and trial and conflict with the powers that be. And it's a hard time. If the first half is the good times, this Lenten time leading up to Holy Week and his dying, this is the hard time. Sometimes we don't look at Lent that way. Somehow we get tied up with worrying about my personal sins. That's because we've interpreted the life and of Jesus in a kind of an odd way. That Jesus somehow gets in trouble because of my sin. Actually, it was not my sin, it was the Roman Empire and the Jewish aristocracy that kills Jesus. It's called, still we call it the way of the cross. It's the way of birth, success, growing, expanding, light, hope. And then I have to tell you, what else could it mean when you go to Lent, Holy Week, Good Friday? That's the trek downward. It's descent. It's struggle, pain, loss, suffering. Finally, we'll get to a third stage, a third part. That's Easter Pentecost. That's resurrection, transformation, new life. You can't jump over the middle part. You can't just pretend life is always success and achievement and then it just goes on, because it's not my life and I don't think it's your life. I know people today in my congregation, one person's family just died from COVID. There was no healing. There was no coming back from the brink. It simply was death. Another person's going into rehab after being at home for a while, and they're struggling to try and get back to where they were, but it's a hard time. Just looking at the news, because of the struggles with heat and energy and water over the last week, many people still without even water. Yeah, I think it'll come back, but there's all kinds of consequences to this struggling we're in. And it happens at a personal level too. Marriages go up and they go down. Sometimes they make it out, sometimes they don't. Many of you know people who are divorced because they could not make it out of the struggle they were in. Just spoke with a person who came to church, the front door, and they're restarting their 12-step program, trying to meet in person at our church again. So we're trying to work that out with COVID and making sure they can meet. But the person said, look, we haven't met for almost a year. And some of the people in the recovery program, they fell off the wagon, so to speak. They went back to using their addiction. Some of them have left the program because they know their program is day by day, and there are many pitfalls. Some people do relapse. So I don't need to give you a laundry list of the difficulties in life. Sometimes I think in America we pretend it's always going to get better. We're always progressing. We're always achieving. We're trying to be winners, when lots of time life is full of brokenness and loss and failure and what we would say are the losing end. And I just want to affirm for you that Jesus walked that same path. That's what we call the way of the cross. That's what life is like in this world. There will be an Easter and there will be an ascension. There will be a coming back at a higher level. But this is our time of the year to remember. And we're all in this together. We're remembering that life can be difficult. It can be hard. It is hard. It will be hard. Nobody wins all the time. No one's body goes on forever. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Christianity affirms there's more after the end of things, but still, there's no resurrection unless there's a death. There's no transformation unless something dies. So hang with me. Jesus walked this path. We walk it with him. Jesus didn't accomplish something, quote, on the cross so that we wouldn't have a cross. He just showed us how to deal with crosses. He didn't do something that got us out of death. He said, let's walk through death and losses and grieving together. I will show you the way through. I'm grateful for that. To have somebody who's walked the way before I did. We follow him into the way of the cross. So be affirmed. If you're in a bad place right now, we call it bad. It's not really bad. It's just the way. It is the pattern. Jesus has walked that way with you and before you. And I do too. And if you were to come to this church, you'll find lots of people who are walking the way of the cross, and together we learn how to make it through. So let me turn to our contemplative time. If you can develop a contemplative life, in other words, an inner source of strength, and that's what it means to be filled with Spirit and to have the mind of Christ, it is instrumental and extremely helpful in working with the downside, the loss, the grief, the suffering. A spiritual life can really help, and so can a community of people to do it with. So let's practice a little contemplative prayer time. Recenter, refocus on the inside where you will find your strength and find the way through. So let's begin. 2 minutes of prayer time. Simply follow the video and follow the instructions.
For many of us, this moment feels chaotic and terribly stressful. Join us for a few moments to turn inward and connect to your innermost you. Gently close your eyes and feel the gentleness of breath inside your body as you repeat these words. My deepest me is love. My deepest me is whole. My deepest me is limitless. My deepest me is infinite. My deepest me is compassion. My deepest me is sacred. My deepest me is mystery. My deepest me is forgiveness. My deepest me is beauty. My deepest me is God. My deepest me has knowledge to give. I open my heart and listen.
Well, thank you all for spending a little time on this Monday, the 22nd, just to pray together, be together online. So I don't have the capacity to both talk and look at any comments you might have at the same time. But there'll be a time to pray together tonight as well at 7:30. We're kind of back on our usual morning and evening prayer schedules. And as you go through your day, may you know the peace and the love of God, no matter what your outward circumstances are like. Sometimes they will be ascending and achieving. Sometimes they will be losing and going downhill. But we do it together, following the way of the cross. It is truly the way of life. Talk to y'all soon. See you tomorrow at 12, if not before.